Hello, everyone. Hi there. Welcome, welcome. I hope you guys are all enjoying yourselves. Data Connect is very much a passion of mine, so I'm very excited here to present the Explainable AI Bridging the Belief Gap session. This will be a non-technical review of a technical topic, so very excited to share. Hopefully everybody can see the screen. If not, please give a shout, but we think we've figured out a workaround. So if you're looking for more tech specs, so if not already, you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to be in this session, definitely check out our technical specs. They're in a LinkedIn post. You can look up my name. I'll share some of my other colleagues who worked on this. The title of the post is A Journey to Build Explainable AI Recommendations to Help Scale Sales Efficiency Across LinkedIn. Promise you, we tried to make it more jazzy. Did not turn out that jazzy with titles. We're data people after all. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the different waypoints on this belief journey. The belief journey around data, ML, AI, that kind of all builds together. So we'll talk a little bit about some pushback we had from our own data science teams and partners. Some questions I had from my perspective. What our sales general manager had questions around and his kind of belief gaps. Some of our users, our sales trainers, and our executive team. So who worked on this? So as with everything, I believe it takes a village. So we had leaders across LinkedIn's data ecosystem and collaborate to build this. So you get me, Rodrigo, again, Rodrigo Aramayo, Global Head of Data Insights at LinkedIn. But this could not have gotten done without Parvez and Fang Fang. So if you guys are looking for interesting, really brilliant people to follow on LinkedIn, please follow them. A quick little hit on myself. So spent about 13 years in data, advanced data analytics before it was called data science. Been mostly working around Fortune 100 companies in the B2B SaaS space. So some dabbling in B2C, but mostly in that world of business to business sales and powering them with data and empowering those companies, those large enterprises to use data in their go-to-market motions. I've been at LinkedIn about 4 years as the director of this global insights team. So now let's talk a little bit about what we're here. I'm going to take you traveling back in time a little bit. So back in March 2020, COVID-19 viruses spreads, cases are multiplying. April 20th, the world starts to shut down. So you guys remember this? This was like toilet paper shortages here in the United States, and a lot more happening across the world. Flatten the curve happens in May 20. So we start to feel a little bit of hope, and things like business, like our sales and revenue, start to kind of come up and become more talked about at companies. We're moving away from the how do we keep our employees just safe, more to great, how does our business evolve? And so in July of 2020, our executive team approached a group of the data professionals at LinkedIn and asked, how do we relearn to do business in this new environment? Really, like, so much has changed. So much of the world has changed. How does our business evolve? And what are the most pressing needs from our sales our sales users and our sales people to be able to be successful in this new world? The outcome is by November 2020, we had built a Crystal Candle AI and launched what we called Account Prioritizer to over 1,500 sales reps. Then we were able to measure the actual results in revenue lift through a series of A/B tests by April 2021 that showed we actually delivered an 8% lift off of a $4 billion base in bookings. So that's why hopefully, this is a good story in terms of the things you'll run into. I think more importantly is it feels like it repeats itself as data professionals as we work to meet business outcomes. We often run into a couple of different milestones, a couple of different trials. And what I'm here to do is share some of my learnings. So like I said, this is not a technical session. We have all our technical specs up out in the public, so please feel free to read more of those. But we'll start with one of the biggest challenges we had at the beginning is that question of the world has changed in 3 months. How do we relearn to do business? So what did that mean? Well, that meant that airlines, hotels, restaurants, auto industries that were booming before COVID-19 had moved to basically busting, struggling to kind of maintain business as usual, moving into layoffs from a cost-cutting perspective pretty quickly. And what that meant to LinkedIn, it meant that contracts that we had signed for our talent solutions products, these multi-year or annual contracts, were beginning to be at risk. And we had customers calling us and saying, hey, how can I end this contract early? So becoming a churn risk. On the other side of the coin, there were industries that were doing well before the pandemic, and all of a sudden found themselves in this moment of boom. So think of internet providers, think about leisure products. Like we all probably bought a lot of sweatpants. We're sitting at home and moving to this new at-home workplace, interactive media service. And so these companies suddenly had this very urgent need for our services, right? Like you are you are at Lululemon, or you are at a company that provides online internet service. You're at Netflix, and all of a sudden you need to hire engineers at a much faster pace. You need to hire product marketers at a much faster pace. You basically need to build out your team very quickly. And what that means from a talent solutions perspective is these customers needed to know what we offered. So the biggest challenge for us is making sure that all our large customers knew that we offer a suite of solutions. We don't just offer advertising on LinkedIn. We don't just offer recruiter licenses so that recruiters can use LinkedIn to find talent. We offer a suite of solutions. So basically what that turns into is about 1,500 sales reps needed to understand the health of over 650,000 customers fast. Their worlds had changed. All the information that they had gathered over time was starting to become outdated. And what that question meant for us from a data science perspective is like, what are we really solving for, right? Are we actually really solving for, identifying like a new way to sell? Are we really solving for identifying like new insights for a company? Or are we actually solving for changing human behavior? And what the answer we came to was we were actually solving for changing human behavior. So there's this human bias understanding of good versus bad, this cognitive bias codex we looked at and said, how many of these, actually fit our sales teams? Like recency bias. Well, I just talked to this account and they told me that they're okay. And so like, I don't think they're a risk to churn, but like, you don't know. They may be experiencing something that we had not accounted for during the pandemic. Oh, I heard from this decision maker that they're only going to grow about 20% over the year. So I roughly know what they can buy. Do you? Maybe they're in a boom cycle and we don't actually know yet. So what we wanted to do was move to a data-driven customer purchase propensity scores. And that was a very understandable, classic kind of data science problem, but embedded in having this conversation and thinking through this was the understanding that it wasn't just about the accuracy of the score. It was really about changing human behavior. And that was the goal. That was going to be our success metric from a data science perspective. So we would define success by human actor changing behavior. And that was, a more interesting. My background prior to moving to data science world was more of behavioral economics. And so that got me really excited about the kind of the fallacies and the ways in which behavior can be shaped. However, that's where doubt starts to enter. And doubt came in the form of our sales general manager, so the person that is accountable via quota for the full $4 billion-ish on an annual basis. And that doubt came in the form of, okay, do we need AI or machine learning? Like, do we need these advanced approaches? Won't it be more difficult to get people to adopt what we build if they don't understand it? And I think that is a very important point that I want to drive home here. As data professionals, we often hinge our answers on like, why do we need AI or machine learning around elegance, extendability, and improved accuracy. those things are foundationally important and have been proven time and time again in the industry that these advanced approaches produce better results. What a non-technical executive hears, it's a black box. We'll never know really how it works, which makes it very difficult for me to change people's behaviors, to say, hey, no, trust the model. And so I think that's just was an aha moment early in my career, and continues to be requires a reminder for me on a case-by-case basis. So potentially a better answer, not to say that I have all the answers, but potentially a better answer is one that anchors more on the value that the humans and the business get. So these advanced methods actually require us to spend less time deciding what goes into the model, not no time, but less time, versus assessing the accuracy of its predictions. So an example that we used with this sales executive is, imagine that your doctor tells you need to decrease your blood pressure. In traditional modeling methods, you have to set the importance of each exercise versus water versus stressful job. You're basically setting the impact that these have, and then testing whether or not those have impact. More, from a non-technical perspective, more of the ML approach is allowing all the inputs that you can possibly get, or as many as you feel confident you can measure accurately, potentially having them have impact, but actually through simulations, seeing whether or not you are better able to predict the outcomes. And in that way, it matters less what goes into the model, but a lot more what the outputs and the predictions that come out of it are. So that landed. That was like, okay, I can get behind that. That makes sense. But we had to acknowledge, yes, traditional methods are way easier to implement, because like in the example, we can tell you that we know that exercise is important. We can tell you that drinking more water will help you decrease your blood pressure. And in that way, it's easier to explain. That's where explainability really comes in. And again, the technical implications and the platform that we have, we believe, is pretty cutting edge. So definitely something to take a look at. But explainability of these advanced models is really kind of our secret sauce here. So how that kind of manifested itself, once we had a pilot, we had produced a prediction, and we were like, we believe this company has upside. And the response we got from the first sales user in our pilot group was like, I know for a fact that account has no upside. And I think if we take a moment to reflect on that, oftentimes that feels like an attack on our modeling and on our data skills. But if we continue to operate with hubris, we kind of go back and say, well, these advanced methods are really robust. They have been proven time and time again. But I think we do need to reflect upon the fact that all models are dependent on observable data. And once we actually ask that sales user, will tell us more why you know for a fact that there's no upside of this account. The sales user shared with us, well, I spoke with the CHRO at the PTA meeting where our kids go to, and they told me that budgets were completely frozen, and like this is a C-level executive who owns the budget. So like I know for a fact that like whatever your model says, there is no money going to come from this account. And that was a great conversation. So what that actually turned into is like, oh, well, yeah, that's an unobservable. We can't observe internal budgets of accounts. That's not in the models. It would be proprietary information. So maybe a better framing, again, I don't know, this is the right answer. This is a better framing that we found, is our models and our recommendations, they're derived from the need to be seen as complementary to the sales process. So we are here to complement your conversations, these unobservables that you can observe only through human interaction, with quantifiable data. And in that way, it makes it enhances the simplicity of your decision. So rather than doing both the data analysis in your head as well as discovering these unobservables, you can actually have the goodness of both things. And then I'll just call out here for the space that I'm I've spent more time working in the B2B sales space, especially large contracts. They remain very human interactions. It is usually a group of people sitting around a table identifying pros and cons of doing business with one another. As much as we'd like to think it's a very quantifiable ROI calculation, return on investment calculation, it oftentimes has a lot to do with their belief on the mutual the mutual values the companies have, as well as like the viability of this company continuing to exist. As someone who's also worked at startups, if your buyer doesn't think that you'd be around in a couple of years, it makes them more hesitant to invest in you, knowing that they may not get the support that they need. So the takeaway there really is, for me, was defining the communication and adoption strategy for your outputs, whatever that model output is, with the business really early is extremely valuable. That conversation, that dialogue with your users is extremely valuable. So next, we got to the sales trainer. So, okay, we've crossed the chasm of our executive team believes that this is the right way to go. We've built out a pilot. We're starting to post results. We've gotten some pilot user feedback, and we're ready to go to a wider audience. In that wider audience, we start to get questions from the trainers. They're like, well, we know skepticism exists. We know that there's an inherent like, is this model trying to tell me how to do my job better? How do we build trust with these sales users? So I would say this is one, don't do as we did initially. And we had postponed our work around explainability. So again, there's a technical brief there, but to us, what explainability means is that what we do is we create transparency in our AI models. Its transparency means that AI system behavior and its related components are understandable, they're explainable, and they're interpretable. Again, the goal here is for the end user to understand these systems. And when we say end user, they're usually non-technical end users to understand these systems at a good enough level that they can trust them. We'll suggest improvements. Again, we are suggesting improvements. And then we'll identify potential problems if they arise. So that's that feedback loop in that conversation. When there is a disconnect from what the model says and what they are observing in the real world, making sure that we have that feedback loop so that we can relook at the model or re-energize our training programs. So explainable AI in practice, what that looked like was we created these narrative-driven insights for each account level recommendation. And so it's a little blurry and a little small, but the gist of this is that not only were we giving them a score, in this example, it's a high score. This account is very likely to upsell. But then we were explaining what are the drivers behind this ML model. And we gave 5 different examples here of drivers behind that model with quantifiable data outputs. This actually really kind of changed the game for us. We started to see a lot more adoption. And then we started to really have that dialogue between the modeler and the human actor. Like that became where we actually saw engagement by not just the executives, but then the frontline managers and their managers and the individual contributors, ultimately the salespeople who are meeting directly with customers. And so again, just highly encouraged not to do as we did and kind of say, well, we'll get to the explainability layer later. Cool. And so, right, this is where you're like, oh, great. Rodrigo's about 15 minutes into his presentation. What a great story. Huzzah. The executive team we believe, the users believe, everybody is happy. Yeah, unfortunately, only in Hollywood are endings that nicely packaged. So we still face some challenges to go forward. Some of our current challenges are really the scalability and timely acquisition of external macro data. Back when I showed a kind of an example of what the inputs to the model are, a lot of them actually turned out to rely on external macroeconomic data. So data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, industry trends, layoff data that's made public. And that was actually quite a big driver of our explainability power. And so being able to get that on a regular basis and update it at the same speed at which the world continues to change has been a challenge. Data cleanliness, data structuring, also a challenge. When you're working with external data, you don't control the form in which it comes. Internally is more about internal metric reliability. So when we think of like the other things that power our model, a lot of it is product usage data. So it's internal how has the account, how have users of the products that we provide, how have they been using them? Have they been using them in an effective way? Are we starting to see trends that tell us that they're seeing less value in the actions that they take? And I would say that we have a pretty robust data governance system around that. But we knew that in order to go from good to great, that we would need to double down our efforts, both as we kind of expanded our product suite and we started to see changes in user behavior. Recruiters were using our product in slightly different ways. Our daily active users were changing kind of the times and the things they would accomplish on certain days of the week and certain times of the certain parts of the month. All those things were leading us to make sure that we had a robust governance and data pipeline system. Finally, a continuing challenge that we have is this human actor bias kind of creeping back in. So you provide a model, and this model was surfaced in a couple of different places, but most centrally surfaced in kind of the we like to call it the cockpit view of a salesperson, is where a salesperson spends 90% of their day kind of managing their contacts, managing their opportunities. We have our scores in there, so it's available, it's usable, but then it becomes kind of like, do I need to look at it every month? Maybe I've had some conversation, maybe I use it to reset my understanding of this account, but now through my conversations, I'm starting to allow more of that avoiding churn bias to come in, or favoring friendlies. And those two things is just like, churn conversations is basically a customer who doesn't want to buy your product anymore, is trying to get out of their contract. A struggling salesperson will just avoid that phone call until it's too late. And then favoring friendlies is like, this account is really nice to me. They may not be spending more, but like, it's a really nice conversation, so I'll spend more time with them. And neither one of those is actually productive for growing our revenue, and it's not productive for the salesperson hitting their quota, which is an important component of their success and how they're measured. So I would say those have been some of the most kind of endemic or ongoing challenges that we've had. I do think that it has been an incredibly valuable lesson for our entire team and everyone involved to kind of work through these challenges and these pushbacks. And again, like we covered here, all these things that are probably not so common in our conversations around what makes up a great data science program or great data scientist, but being able to answer and meet the business where they're at and meet the humans where they're at, I think is actually quite important, especially in this business to business world that, again, is very human driven, as much as we'd like to put data around how it behaves. The reality is there are still quite a bit of unobservables. And I think hopefully this was a good story. Hopefully this jotted some memories, and hopefully you took something away from it. So I will stop there and just say thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it, and plug one more time that if you're looking for those technical specs, please find them on our LinkedIn post, so you can navigate it through my LinkedIn or anybody else's on the team.